Usually whenever I start hitting them bad, I just think
Then
it's my
it's-
fault. So
Isn't it the truth? I always blame the clubs.
you're smart.
And welcome back to ClubTest Debrief, where our editors and writers put the latest gear through their paces and offer their insights on not only their testing experience, but standout products for 2024. Today, we're continuing the conversation with Zephyr Melton. You had a chance to test SM10. What were your initial thoughts when you went through the testing process?
Everyone knows Vokey, but getting to go through the process with the man himself is always special. So I got to do that last year for the first time, and then this year got to get back with my guy, get my annual tune-up with him. So that was great. But it was really fun, like you said, with the new SM10s from the man himself.
All day. All day.
What's it like to test with Voke?
Well, last year it was a lot more intimidating than this year. This year I was kind of more used to it. But last year I will say I hit a couple hosel rockets, which is a bit embarrassing in front of a man who's
Understandable.
a man whose name is synonymous with wedges. But you know, it's also it's a bit like a pseudo lesson that you get with him, because he not only is he a gearhead, but he also knows a lot about technique and how different players do different things.
Yeah, what I do too. Remember, Sevy always used to say to me years ago, he said, Vokey, short club, grip down on it without going down on it. Stay here. What that does, brings the bottom up, brings your bounce up a little bit. You know?
So grip down a touch.
Yeah, it depends on something you can play with, do your
So
homework
am I bringing
with.
the heel up a little
Oh yeah, if you want, but I never was a lover with the heel up. I always loved it, my low hands, like that.
It's very fun to be able to do that with Voke.
You went out to TPI in Oceanside, California, which RB and I can attest is one of those like golf meccas. I mean, if you get a chance to go out there to hit balls, that's where whenever the tour pros come in town for Torrey, that's typically where they'll go over to do testing. How does Titleist do a wedge fitting? What's their process like, and how did that compare to the way that you've gone about doing wedge fittings?
Yeah, I mean, I've never really done wedge fitting in the past, so that was my first experience. But yeah, they'll take you out. They have, like you said, they have a pretty robust setup, but they'll take you out over to the short game area where they've got a few different greens and bunkers, and you'll hit shots from different lies, whether it be a tight lie around the green, more of a full shot from more of a fairway cut, and then they'll have you hit it out of the rough, and then also do some bunker shots. So you just hit a variety of shots, and it's basically the fitter. In this case, it was Bob Vokey. He'll have just a handful of wedges of different grinds and bounce conditions and all that, and he'll just have you, he won't tell you what any of them are. He'll have you hit it, and then he'll ask you how it feels, and he can kind of tell based on the sound and the contact that you're making. He can kind of tell which direction he's pushing you and which ones perform best for your swing type. And so he'll have you hit a couple, and then he'll be like, he'll kind of sit there and think and ponder on it for a second, and then he'll grab a different grind and hand it over to you. And for a while you're like, what are we doing? Like, this is it like, for someone who's not super gear fluent, I guess, I'm like, I'm curious to see where he's headed with this. But then by the end, you're just so dialed in with these wedges. The ball is spinning like you've never seen it spin before, and the club head is just cutting through the turf in a way that, you know, I don't think I would have thought was possible if I weren't in the absolute best gear for my swing.
And I like the fact too is narrowing your stance like you do, you know.
Yeah.
It gets out of it. Then you make it all shoulders.
Was there ever a scenario where they went through the testing process and he gave you something that wasn't a good fit, just to see if it wasn't a good fit? Because I think that's the interesting thing, is like, a lot of people always ask, like, can you really tell if you have the wrong grind? Do you have an experience where you test something, you're like, again, trying not to look at it. I mean, I do the same thing. I always try not to look at whatever someone is giving me as a fitter.
It's so difficult.
And I've been handed a wedge before where I stuck it so far into the ground, I thought, okay, whatever this was, it wasn't right for me. Did you have that experience where he handed you something and it was like, this isn't right at all?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there were certain clubs that he would hand to me, and I would make what I thought was a good swing, and just the way that the club head interacted with the turf, it just felt completely off. But, you know, like you said, the thing is, it was just the grind was not correct for the way that I deliver the club head to the ball. So yeah, he did go through a little bit of that where he would hand me one and I'd hit a couple and he was like, I don't know about that. It kind of reminds me of that scene in the first Harry Potter movie where they're trying to find the wand that he's going to use, and he hands him one and he's flicking it around and like breaking things. That's what it feels like when you have the wrong wedge in your hand. You make a swing and you're like, oh my gosh, what did I just do there?
I love that analogy.
I think that's our first Harry Potter reference for
Yeah, I was about to
Club
say.
Test.
Yeah, it's
There we
probably
go.
good first and last.
When it comes to the looks and the way they've refined from the SM9 to the SM10, did you like the head profile? Because I think what's interesting about them is they do encourage so much, especially to being the Vokey crew. You know, they want you to play that specialty pitching wedge because it is something that's going to help you on those short game shots, because it does offer, compared to like the pitching wedge that goes with most sets, a little bit more face technology, a little bit more the way the mass is moved around just for that ball flight control. Did you like how the profiles really moved through the wedges? Because again, going from the, say, like your gap wedge, or even if I don't know if you had a pitching wedge or not, but going from your gap wedge to your sand wedge to your lob wedge, seeing that face profile just change because of the way that you're designed to open up the face of those golf clubs. Did you find that was something that was easy to get used to, and also something that, especially when you get into the shorter clubs and you're opening up the face, a little more confidence inspiring compared to the previous generation?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, before I had done my fitting with Voke, I think I was never used to like opening up the face as much, whether it be a gap wedge or a sand wedge or even a pitching wedge. I was never really used to it. And then whenever I started hitting some shots with him, he would be like, "So why aren't you opening up the face here?" And I was like, I don't really know. Like, I only open up the face with the 60. He was like, "Well, why don't you try opening it up here and like see what you can do?" And it was a little bit uncomfortable for me just because it's not a shot that I had hit a lot before. But then just he was like, "I promise you, if you open it up, make that same swing, here's how the ball is going to react." And, he was correct every time. And so now with these wedges, I feel like I have a lot more tools in my bag in terms of different shots that I can hit with different wedges. Like if I want to sit there and open up the face on a gap wedge, for example, if that's kind of the shot that it calls for. So I feel like I have a lot more tools in the bag, can be a little more creative around the greens. And I think it mostly comes from just all the technology that they've put in the heads for these new wedges.
Yeah. That one's going in. Oh.
Almost.
And that's your 54.
Yeah.
You know you can use it.
That wasn't too bad. Wasn't too bad.
Okay, I want to transition into the irons. You were fit into the new T series.
Mm-hmm.
What was your setup, and was it different than what you had in your mind going in, or was it pretty similar to where you figured you were going to land?
Yeah, no. So last year I was fit, like, okay, like I'm going to get fit into the newest T200s, like that'll be it. But this year they've released the T150s, which are kind of in between the T100, T200s. And so with that new kind of bridge between the players' irons and the mid irons, it gave me a gap in there to where I fit in. So I was able to blend the set a little more. So for pitching wedge through 6-iron, I was fit into the T150s. And then instead of having to put a 5-iron in the bag, I actually got a T200 5-iron that I hit better than my 5 hybrid, which I was totally surprised by. Every club in my bag was different, and the irons were the ones that surprised me the most.
You're the perfect example. I was going to say the player that probably fits into that T150, and I think it's a huge reason why they introduced it, because the T100 and the T100S were basically the same size. They were not the same golf club. They had different. The T100S had different loft profile throughout the set, different construction into the longer irons. And so there was definitely, but from a looks perspective, they were almost identical. So I think for a lot of players that really liked that profile, but didn't really find that it was too forgiving, the T200 was in some cases a bit of a jump for a lot of players. And the T150 showcases, again, perfect example of something where you're going to get a little bit more ball speed, a little bit more forgiveness in a profile that's a little bit more, not game improvement by any means, but more confidence inspiring, rather than going into that smaller club. So what it does is it creates a lot better separation. And I think, as you said, like, not only did it showcase for you in your gapping into your shorter golf clubs, but it also helped with ball speed into your longer irons. So then when you got into the new T200, you saw a golf club that was launching higher, and be able to stop it more rather than going to a hybrid. So you get all of that control, but it still blends throughout the set. So there's not this big jump between clubs.
It still has the look and feel of a player's iron, but it gives you the forgiveness and ball speed of maybe a game improvement iron. So it's pretty cool to have those in the bag because they look like some players' irons, they feel like some players' irons, but sometimes they give you the forgiveness that you need from more of a game improvement set.
I mean, it was wholesale changes to your bag, but it was due to something that I'm sure some golfers out there are probably going through right now, which is just gaining more speed, whether it's you're getting in the gym or doing very specific golf swing speed training. I think you're a great example of why, if you're going that route, you really need to be cognizant of like your setup and getting with a fitter, because there's a pretty good chance that if you are adding speed, that the setup you have in the bag might not be the best option for you.
I was going over to the simulator and I was like, oh, I'm just going to try to put on a little speed, just do some speed training. Did that, and I didn't put on like a ton of speed, but I definitely got 4, 5, 6 miles per hour faster.
That's a lot, by the way.
Well, it's a lot if you already swing fast, but whenever you're slow to begin with, it's not that much. But anyway, so then whenever I would be hitting on the simulator, I would see the TrackMan numbers, and it was like, like the good ones are still good, but whenever I hit them off center, I was seeing that high right miss that with the driver was giving way too many RPMs. I was getting up to like 3,600 RPMs, and I was hitting high right lazy pop flies that were not going out there as far as I thought they should have. I went in there and I was like swinging a little faster, and now whenever I don't catch one of these good, like I'm putting too much spin on it. And whenever we went through the fitting process, they're like, oh yeah, it's because you're swinging a little bit harder. They don't have the same numbers that your miss hits last year had. So we had to change all that up. So I was glad that I got in for another fitting now that I have a little more speed.
Well, Zach Blair is a big TSR1 guy out on the PGA Tour, so you know what, you're not alone in knowing the fact that it's kind of one of those things where when you adjust the loft plays a big part in it when you talk about center of gravity of the driver and all those different things. So again, perfect example of one size doesn't always fit all, and I think the hybrid, your hybrid is another perfect example of that as well. Or your utility iron of why certain things work for certain players.
I went in there, I was like, I have no ego about any of this. I will hit an entire bag full of hybrids if you tell me it's going to make me play the best. Obviously, that's not what's going to make me play the best, but I was like, I don't care what these clubs look like, what they feel like, what the shaft flex is, like any of that. I just want to play the clubs that are going to make me hit the ball the best.
All right, Z. So we've been wrapping up these debriefs by asking all the testers, what was the biggest equipment win for you during your testing session out of TPI? So fill in that blank for me.
I think it is getting a 9 wood in the bag. I'm super stoked about that.
Yes, 9 wood.
Yeah, I've been a big 7 wood guy the last few years, and I was like, okay, like let's get another 7 wood in the bag. But then just based on the gapping, my fitter was like, I think maybe we need to put even a little more loft on this. So I started hitting the 9 wood, and it's awesome, just the way that it comes out so high, so soft, still gets a lot of distance out there, but such a fun club to hit. And 9 wood is not a club that you see every day, but after I hit it a few times, I was like, I think I'm team 9 wood. So I'm really excited about that one.
Those things have started to pop up all over the PGA Tour in the last couple of years, so you're in good company with that 9 wood in the bag. Z, this was a lot of fun, man. Thanks again for walking us through your testing experience at TPI with the new Vokey SM10, T-Series, and TSR woods.
Absolutely. Thanks, guys.